raising black boys. Today, that was the focus of my of the time I'm going to spend today is in discussion. I'm Deshaun Nelson. Consider myself multidisciplinary. Let's just say I want everybody to understand this. I want to lose some of the jargon. I'm a psychologist. I work with children, work with young adults, middle age. Of course, I think many of us, if you've clicked this video, you have a passion for the youth, or you just have a concern for the youth. You have concern for the Black culture, the Black community as a whole. Maybe you've seen some of the key words, maybe we talk about Black men and women relationships, which I feel we can address as we discuss some of the issues. I think it's clear. Some of the issues between Black men and women, particularly young Black men and Black women. And when I say young, we're talking young adulthood, running us from ages 18 through 40. Yeah, there probably are some concerns after with the elder, but typically people find their path and um, find a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for, satisfaction, life satisfaction, as they enter their senior years. But definitely the becoming and the, figuring life out, it has a lot to do with family building, which young adulthood tends to be the point, the time period where people build families, develop intimacy. And, I definitely have a heart for that topic. And there's a lot going on social media, a lot of riffraff back and forth between Black men and women, which, I have an ears within an earshot, definitely. I have my YouTube algorithm might spin certain videos towards me. And, you know, I think I have a bit of an understanding when it comes to development across the lifespan. And then I believe I've been blessed with a lot of elders and family, professors, teachers, just people in my community as to the Black condition, right? And when we talk about Black, you could say U.S. Black Americans. We have our Caribbean immigrants who definitely share a lot of our story. Even some of our African immigrants will tell you that there are some similarities, but in some particular ways they don't understand or really connect to what's going on, with our youth until they're here for a couple generations and then their youth is in it. Because you will get boxed into the Black category if your skin is about as brown as, this wood behind me, maybe a little bit lighter. When you come over here, there is no color designation. There's no Latino medium brown. You're Black. So that Black experience is a very real experience. I teach Black psychology. I'm consistently studying Black psychology, and then that definitely comes together with young adulthood psychology, adolescent psychology, of course child psychology. Now, speaking specifically about Black boys, we understand Black boys, Black manhood has been it's been attacked, right, by certain I think you talk about other groups, but in particularly we know, the group in the United States, right, that has, put a lot of pressure on the development of Black children on a whole, but of course Black manhood. And then that has an effect on Black women. It always does. Right. So when we talk about Black women and the sensitivity that Black women for years have had towards Black men. And in some ways we talk about how even a single Black mother may raise the Black child, or even the mother who's not single might raise the Black young boy in a way that we would say, well, maybe she's covering him too much. Maybe there's a fear, because there is a concern for Black boys, and we want to talk about how we should raise Black boys today and what. It's not going to be an exhaustive discussion, but there are some pointers, and you can consider this an opinion piece. You can take some of the pointers I'm going to share and maybe discuss it with others in your community, maybe discuss it with colleagues, family. If you say, you know what, Scott is Sean, garbage what he's talking about. So be it. Again, and I'm going to speak from anecdotes, personal experiences. I'm going to speak about research. And it definitely, in short, this is not I'm not going to be here, but for so long going on about this. But I want to just open up by saying that there is definitely a concern on both sides, Black men and Black women, as a community, for the development of Black boys and how that impacts, the development into Black men, and how that's going to affect Black women, right? So in essence, we're talking about Black community development when we specifically talk about Black boys. I might come on another time and speak about, developing Black girls, and maybe even have someone else, chime in some ways, maybe have another Black woman speak to it. But I think what I'm trying to ground now is the argument that, as we focus on development of Black boys, and when we look at the education system and look at the penal system, right? We look at just systems in general. We could go later on into employment systems, right? Of course, criminal justice, as mentioned. Um, and now people are getting to this mental health systems. You see that, yes, Black men and women are affected, but there seems to be a bit of a target when I systematically, right? And it doesn't mean that Black women don't suffer as much, if not more, in certain cases, but systematically you see that there is a bit of a targeting. And the system is not. I'm not here to say, the system, this is how we can break the system down. That's another discussion, right? And the lobbying, and all that, the fight, pretty much, right? Because if you're not thinking about fighting the system, or at least making changes, right? United States system, when they want to fight somebody else somewhere, they get young men that are able-bodied to go fight, right? So if fighting should not be an issue, right? If you're concerned about Black liberation. But if you look at the conditions, right, whether it's criminal justice conditions, gentrification conditions, underemployment, unemployment conditions, and then for those who are doing well, right, financially, educationally, seemingly, mental health wise, why do we have this clash of, lack of communion between Black men and women? And it's not, I don't want to take the noise and exacerbate the noise. I understand that sometimes what you see online is what will draw eyes, but we still want to, be honest about where we are moving as a culture. And in some ways we have improved and we're more comfortable, but are we more productive and constructive as a culture? And I can say we, right? Black is not a monolith. There are no other cultures that don't think about themselves as a group. All right. Claude Anderson has gone on about this. And even Neely Fuller has spoken of how strong, certain groups, how they move, even when you don't think they are. Let there be a threat. And we have nothing but threats. Right. And we have I shouldn't say we have nothing but threats, but we have a lot of threats. Right, we have a lot of things that are actually antagonizing our development. So, let's get to this. And let's see if I can, as I'm running my mouth, I should have had this ready. I don't have much to show, but I really want to at least give you something to look at as I speak. There had to be a better way to do this. This will work for the time being. Okay, so let's get to the full screen. All right, there we go. This looks a little better. All right, so yes, raising Black boys. All right, so that's really the topic. That's the focus. Um, I already shared your my introduction as to why I'm making this video in the first place. This was overdue, maybe several years overdue. I've spent some time writing, and of course, working and seeing things and not coming online and speaking, so I definitely apologize. Yeah, so let's get to some of the areas that we're going to need a complete, restructuring. All right. And I've already made these statements, these introductory statements. All right. So I'm going to start with the first area where we need a restructuring. Definitely need a restructuring. And that's going to be academics. All right. Now, the average child is going to spend, if they're in school, they're going to spend maybe from 8 a.m., let's say 8:30 to 3:30. It's really like a full day of work, 7, 8 hours in school. All right. So if you spend 8 hours in school, 8 hours sleeping, and then you spend your other 8 hours with family, right? That's a third of their, time, their childhood will be spent in school. Right? It's meaning they're going to be away from you, right? So for those parents who are, homeschooling, maybe this doesn't apply, right? Because maybe the grading is probably going to work out a little differently. Maybe you want the focus, maybe the child is probably going to be focused because you're working with them and you can see what's happening. But the reason why I say the standard grade is an A, because if a child is producing like an A student, for the average child, we have some that are really quick and swift, and they can get A's and get into all type of things. But if a child is focused enough to receive an A grade across the board, they're probably not going to find themselves in but so much trouble, and they're going to spend more time reading. Reading versus watching TV, playing on the internet. I, as a teacher, I find that most of my students who read get A's, right? If you kind of read a little bit, you're looking at a B. If you don't read at all, C, stretching, maybe a B minus if you're pretty clever. But if you're reading, you're going to get an A. If you're focused and you're behaving, you're going to get an A. Now, for those students who have learning disabilities, right, specific learning disabilities in certain areas, then you can change that up, all right? But the standard should be an A across the board, across socioeconomic status, right? So if you're in the hood, if you're in the suburbs, if you're in the jacks, all parents, regardless of what you did in school, regardless of how wild you might have been, you might have left school at junior high. If you want to change the Black culture, standard grade is an A. I don't have to name a particular culture from the far west, far east, who has kind of just rerouted, their status even over here by just making sure their children got to get an A. You would see children crying because they got a B grade. All right. You got to get an A. Now, if children don't get an A, you don't throw them out the house. But do you know, right, what they say, you shoot for the stars. If you missed it, you probably will reach the moon. The standard grade is an A. That's it. Our children are too smart, right? They know everything else. They can sit down and argue you from point A to point B. All right. Then you should just be one of the best students in school. All right. Now, if I'm enforcing this in my household, but you aren't enforcing this in your household, then yeah, my child is going to school. He's getting A's, and you got all these other boys saying, "Oh, you're a nerd. You're a punk. You're this." See, all of our kids are our kids at this point. All right. We're talking about community. We're in a dire place. We're not doing very well, if you haven't noticed. Right. Even we have rich people, right, who are like, whoa, I'm rich, but I don't have any power because of this. All right. Oh, I'm still afraid when I see the sirens, and I don't have a country to call to get me out of this mess. In fact, the continent of our origin, many of those individuals are coming here because they're dealing with the lack of power, right? And there's some good things going on over there. It's definitely worthy of discussion. in another place. But we have to become, and this is going to be a theme going throughout, and we're talking about raising boys, right? Because believe it or not, the girls will actually follow the boys on a certain code. And if you remember school, everybody's having fun and everyone, there's some girls, there's some strong wills, of course, but when it comes to setting tone and the pace and that aggression, the boys are setting the tone, kind of leading how the school's going to be conducted. All right. Even some of your more talk about behavioral, the people who just draw the attention, tends to be boys, right? Talk about that testosterone, that aggression. All right. So we are in a place where we have to think. And what do we say? We're going to be militant about how we raise our boys, and so be it. All right. How many young men, older men will tell you, oh, my dad was militant and it was hard at the time, but I'm okay. I'm okay now. I'm actually happy about it. All right. I had the mean, well, my parents were actually strict. It could have been stricter. All right. If I could go back, then I'd say, yeah, you guys should probably turn. But love them, love them. But I had a very, very kind of strong, gym teacher, basketball coach. He may kick me off the team once. And I see him, anytime I see him when I'm on the track, I want to hug him. And I'm just like, wow, you helped shape me. So this is grazing boys, right? Even for those who get into the corporal punishment, whether it's the spanking and the belt, many will say, listen, I don't want to beat the girls, but the boys, oh, they need it, right? So boys are different. Women will kind of follow the pace. Women are safer in general, right? When we look at dangerous activities, hazardous behavior, women do not engage in as much as men, gambling and what have you, all right? So when it comes to the strict rule, and we definitely want to apply the academics to the girls, fine, all right? But the boys, the standard grade is an A. And I want to reiterate, I don't care what you did growing up. Oh, school is not, I made it. Who cares? Standard is an A. Domestic, kind of in line with the whole militancy. Make the boys work. All right, make these boys work. Right, this is simple. This is not no over the head. Oh, see my Howard. Forget the degrees. Forget anything. Right, I'm just a man speaking to people interested, and I'm sure there are others from other cultures who might click in and say, "Hey, this stuff works." I want to implement this in my household on an individual level. So be it. Right, but we're talking about raising Black boys with, I want to bring some of that strictness back that our great grandparents and grandparents had, who didn't have all the information or even the academic opportunities, even some of the work opportunities. But as far as the strictness and the respect level, that's what we're missing. We're smart, know everything, right? Right? Make the boys work. Single moms, you should be living like a queen in the house. All right. Don't have to even discuss girls with this, right? Because young girls, they say, oh, we're doing all the work in the house anyway. Make the boys work. All right. So cooking as well. Cooking, cleaning. I can't tell you how many children are in families that I work with on a clinical level, and I'll talk to the parents, on a one-on-one. Were you allowed to get away with this when you were young? Oh, no. Did you do any chores? Oh, I did everything. Does he have any chores? Well, not really. Cleans his room. Make these boys work. Next, civic engagement. If you don't know what this means, if you go to church, or your mom used to go to church and you still believe, you're still a believer, right, in the faith, right? I have my faith, right? Believe in God, right? Jesus Christ, right? Is provided the atonement. I believe every man is, sins, right? Is sin daily, right? So I believe in atonement for that. That's my particular faith. But if you share that faith, but you just stop going to church, well, now you got a boy, you might want to get yourself back in there. Or the mosque, right? But we have a history as Black people. Our church played a major role in our civic engagement, right? Our political engagement probably doesn't have the same role anymore. That's okay. You got your community boards, all right? To New York City community boards, they have their meetings. You don't go? Well, you don't go. You never went to one. But now you got a 10-year-old boy, 13-year-old boy, you need to go, right? So if you're already going, you need to have your children engaged. You don't have anything like this at all in your community, you need to create something and engage the boys, right? They have to know about the world, right? The operating, legal operating community, right? Now we can say, oh, what's legal, what's illegal? You got a lot of legal stuff going on in government. Well, then let them be familiar with how government works. For those who are in certain communities where, it's tough, if you don't engage them in how the above ground world works and they get involved in the underground, right? Think about some of these other cultures who came to the United States after us, right? Some of the Southern Europeans, you can kind of read between the lines, right? They definitely had an underground civic engagement and an above ground. We're either doing one or the other. And I'm not saying for us to kind of like, have our children drilled into what's going on underground. There's enough, movies and TV and stuff speaking about these things. But for sure, they should understand where the money's going in their community, where the tax dollars going. All right. Talking about important learning. That way they can say, okay, when I hang out with my mom and my dad, this is what we talk about. This is what we do. All right. It shouldn't be all the important things or the things that really matter. Oh, my mom and dad, they don't know what's going on. And my aunt and uncle, they just hang around and watch TV. So now you might have to become more civically engaged. But you're talking about raising boys into men. There we go. Big issues. I've been working for almost months on another lesson just on the sexual subjugation of Blacks in the United States. And it goes a little bit deeper than what we probably just, more than just plantation abuse, right? There's a lot there. But I'm going to start and just kind of touch on some of the points that we don't have but so much time here. Zero tolerance. Children should have a zero tolerance for your children engaging in sex. Right? Again, not focusing on boys, not the girls, right? Because you see, this is already implemented for most girls. They've grown up with this burden of purity. All right? Your sons reach 18, 19, 20, they want to, experiment. Hey, listen, I'm not going to put my faith into, because we're talking to the Black community. All right? So, but as children, it should be a zero tolerance. It shouldn't be, oh, he's 16, but it's my son, it's not my daughter, so it's cool. Get his little experience. Zero tolerance. Why? Because you're preparing men that are going to marry women. All right, we're talking about preparing Black men and Black women to build families, which build communities, which build our society, and our society has to compete. So what happens if children are having sex before their time? All right, do I have to even go into detail as to why that can be hazardous, why that can be harmful? The mind, the heart, their body. All right, fathers, uncles, grandfathers, wake up. Don't care what you did. Chances are I didn't help you. Zero tolerance for sexual activity. Sex doesn't stop with just intercourse. We're talking all the other acts, which really weren't a part of our community. If you want to query if you want to question some of your grandparents, great grandparents, maybe even parents can tell you, oh yeah, that wasn't really, some of the Boral and the banal. I'm adding letters to kind of throw it around. All right. That wasn't even a part of our community, really. It wasn't normalized. Right. But that's sex too. So zero tolerance for all of it. Right? Pornographic material, that's sex, zero tolerance. Now, if this was a few years back, I would say you shouldn't have any magazines or videos. That's child abuse. But we know it's on the phones now. So that means the United States is engaging in child abuse. If you ask Deshaun, the United States child abuse is because they allow pornographic material. Remember that basketball player that plays in Brooklyn? He was banned, so to speak, for far less. So people can be banned, right? Can be banned for far less, right? Speaking about vaccines, some individuals got banned, and that's a political situation, but people have been banned for far less than putting sexual material on the internet. Oh, but they're showing, pornographic, material it's not so harmful. And okay, so let's say I have two neighbors, and they're married, and every other night I'm looking in the window at them having sex. It's what you're doing when you're viewing pornography. It's voyeurism. It's actually a perversion. All right. So you can continue if you must, adults, but you better do your due diligence and prevent, block phones, check phones when you catch the boys. It's not a laughing matter, because they are transferring that information to the girls and putting the pressure. At this point, the girls can get the information from other girls. Now you got these rappers and whatnot. But if we want to take it from the top, it came from the other communities who were producing this material, and Black men got involved. And again, that's a whole nother, lecture, I guess, so to speak. But in the event, the boys kind of lead in this area still. All right, so it's abusive, zero tolerance. You're talking about raising Black boys, raising them for what? Raising them for a race. We're in a race, right? Racism, race. Black community, issues, young adults, minds are kind of distorted. Them saying is hypersexualization, over-sexualization. That has always been pressed on us here, but it wasn't actualized because we were not living it out. Now we're living it out because we're just too accepting of children engaging in sex. Right? Whatever faith, religion, tell me that you agree with children engaging in sex. Friends, parental control is the key, right? You choose your children's friends, right, up to adolescence. We know adolescence, that's a period of identity development when children begin to separate themselves and away from their parents, right? And they even see their parents as, regular people, right? Still my parent, but, mom and dad, they have their faults. That's adolescence. Of course, they're going to choose some of their own friends. But even at that point, you should be pruning their friendships. All right. So you should still be pruning children's friends. Hey, I don't want you to hang out with that person. Period. Can't be afraid of kids. I just don't, you can see further. Parents, I believe, are anointed to see what their children need. A lot of these children will come back to you years later. You should have did this, or you should have made me get better in school. You shouldn't have let me have my boyfriend, or have talking about boys, whatever. Shouldn't let me have my girlfriend, over at the house. They're gonna come back to you, and it's gonna be a loss. They're not gonna be where they could be. Right? So the friends that your children are around, they're gonna kind of lead them in a certain way. Do you know if we could get on code just on these areas that I've pointed out? Do you know the effect it would have even on the other 15 and 16-year-old children, right? So the adult family are probably on their way to what they're going to be, but just the effect that, we would say by age 12, some even say 8, the child is what they're going to be. But imagine a 15-year-old who is just totally, maybe family is just, out of order. They've just, they've got just tyrannical thoughts, even homicidal thoughts. But if they look around and everybody, just say everybody was on code. And even if they weren't on code, they're still children with parents that are on them. What effect would that have? Right? Because what are you preparing for? Preparing to race, you're preparing for a battle. What's the battle? It's community development. Haven't seen a reparations check come down, right? And thankfully, there's some things that are happening out west. But I mean, a lot of reparations have been given out to a lot of different groups who suffered. If we want to get into the suffering Olympics, it's no comparison. So what does that mean? You have to turn up. You just can't let your kids hang out with anybody. All right, so we're talking boys. And as you can see, so all this stuff will definitely apply and affect the women as you affect the boys. So academics, disability aside, A is the standard. On a domestic level, children are servants. Children are your servants. What you got is what you got, what you earned. They don't got that. They're your servants. Make the boys work. They'll be fine. Trust me, they'll be fine. Harsh discipline, boys shake it off. I grew up in one of my homies had one of the meanest dad, and it didn't bother him at all, because he knew his dad loved him, all right? They'll be fine. Civic engagement, you can call it church, local government activity. It's what we used to do when we weren't as sick as, we are as a community now. Sex, zero tolerance, eliminate the perversions. Friends, you choose them. After adolescence, you can fine tune their choices. Right, that's it. I've ran my mouth enough. This is just, what's important, the issues that are in front of you. Those are the issues that you have to deal with. This is an issue that's in front of me and many of you, right? So this is what we're going to be working on. I have some boys groups, some young adult groups I'll be working with also. I have a contact information. I've given on YouTube. I just give a small amount of information out, but I don't even need people contacting me. I need people to just say, okay, yeah, we're gonna fine tune certain areas. We're not gonna be as lax, right, or as modern. What is modern doing for us? What has it been doing for us lately, right? If you check the scoreboard. All right, so that's it. Take care, everyone.